What makes a great leader? It's a hard one for people to answer, and a lot of people have all types of questions. But the idea and the notion that leadership is the solution to the world's problems, to the challenges we have, whether it's at work, at home, anywhere, any place you go. But it's hard to break down the components of what do you mean by leadership? And how would you train something that you can't quite measure, you can't quite define? And so as we broke this down into components, the first part of leadership is always being super self-aware. If you are not aware of your own blind spots, your own biases, it's almost like you cannot really impact, influence, or do any work with any other people. I think the one part we would all agree with is leadership is doing work at least with other people. Rarely do you think of leadership only being solo. Yes, you have to lead yourself, but it always impacts others as well. But if you're not super self-aware, it's an incredible, painful process to work with people who are not self-aware, which then will lead into the next thing, right? Once you become self-aware, and there's a reason I made one red versus green, then you get to go and play the game of life. Playing the game of life is now you have to be highly situationally aware. In the military, they use the term SA. SA stands for situational awareness. Do you know what's happening? And why life is so difficult today is that when information is changing at the speed it's changing, your need to become situationally aware again and again needs to happen in near real time. And then with that, to make tough decisions. Taking risk is often called making tough decisions because it's not obvious. It's not clear what to do. Decision-making skills is on the right. In the military, they have this term called the OODA loop. OODA loop stands for observe, orient, decide, which sounds like a decision, but it's thinking of what choices, option set of decisions. And then the action is the actual decision. So I think of the OOD as being highly situationally aware, usually with someone. The A, the action, is making that tough call, making that decision. But on the flip side, when you think of what goes wrong, and we talked about this earlier about the, being the bottleneck or being the accelerator of information communication, most of us are trained with today's dangerous watch what you say, cancel culture, and everything else, and a print of anything you say can be recorded, printed, shared, forwarded. There's a two-way avoidance street, especially of difficult topics, difficult conversations.
Josh is saying, can you get some politicians in the HPC? Right, and this
well,
is where
Obama would be a politician, no?
Yes. But this is the avoidance. Tough.
Some of the stuff happening right now, it's awful. But if you think about avoidance and how good we are at avoiding difficult topics, crack that joke, right? You can be sarcastic, but the biggest way avoidance occurs is silence. It happens two ways. If you do it, others will do it, and it goes both ways, which is why I put a two-way avoidance street. So diving into this deeper a little bit, I think of what we need to develop versus the end result of what we want to get. The end result we want is demonstrated leadership ability, and that is made up of two parts. It's will plus skill. Learning how to make decisions well is an absolute skill. This is not easy. It takes time and training. But on the left side, will. I put will because self-awareness is upon us. It's more in my control. I can choose to pursue and go on this journey, which, by the way, is a lifelong journey of self-awareness. There's layers and layers of stuff you will keep discovering, but that is more in our control. And so we're going to break down the two components because a lot of you saw this in the culture tour, right? What we have distilled over a decade of working with tens of thousands of leaders, organizations, was that the 21st century skill that matters most was first and foremost, at the foundational bottom was truth. Difficult discussions, difficult conversations. But then there was a separation of that action from the truth. Risk-taking, making a difficult decision. And I think about it right now. I know gun control and what happened with the shooting even in Texas is big in the news, and there's so much discussion. And sometimes when you don't know what to do, you need to go and act and do something. I love this insight. There's always two levers. There was this researcher that shared way back that, often we look for motivation. We look for what's the right thing to do, and you don't know. And when you keep going into discussion and nothing gets done, knowing there's another lever, which is sometimes you got to just go do something, fire a shot, because the notion of just acting might produce new information that will make discussion more productive or might trigger more action. And to know that the old adage of do not bring me a problem until you have a solution has always put 1 and 2 together as one, right? We will discuss until we know exactly what to do, and then we will go do, right? You will bring me a problem only once you have a solution thought through. That has to be separated. That is industrial age thinking. And the power of knowing that it's not one lever, but it's two. You can press on truth, you can press on risk-taking, and you can learn the skills on both sides. When we work with Olympic athletes and professional athletes, at risk-taking, difficult decisions or difficult action is what they call reaction time. In terms of do you have that built-in reaction time? We worked at public schools, when someone drops something on the floor, do you have the muscle, the reps, the training to just bend down and pick it up? Do you have that trained in you? And that is a trainable skill, reaction time of taking action when you see something wrong or when you see something right to go do. But the flip side is interesting. The notion of communication, conversation, being able to speak, communicate, go at difficult discussions with incredible speed, as opposed to most of us let me see if I can say this the right way. I'm not ready to talk about this yet. Maybe I'll come back to you once I figured out we all act like we're being interviewed by the Wall Street Journal by a gotcha reporter who's going to publish it, right, for everyone to see and make a fool out of us.
Right.
Even in
We all have
one-on-one
judgment.
conversations, we can't speak freely.
Yeah.
Unless we're totally drunk or wasted or so exhausted, then our filters come out and we blurt out. To recognize the need to speak, communicate with speed, just like recognizing the need to act with speed. And so as we dug into this deeper at the bottom, what makes a great leader? Super self-aware, but highly situation aware, plus make tough decisions. On the left is the human nature, the human behavioral trait. Some of the researchers call this your immune system. There is a preemptive muscle. Forget about physical. When you see something like you're about to fall, you brace yourself right away. You might try to protect your head, or if you're tripping, you put your hands out. That's like a physical reaction we get trained on. We have the mental equivalent. They are preemptive steps that we have been trained, whether we realize it or not, into our habits that is trying to protect us. But that preemptive protection can also be something that prevents us from being able to go into difficult conversations of truth. It prevents us from taking difficult decisions, taking action.
This is where a lot of us don't even know we're doing it, right? It's
Mhm.
so in our unconscious, we don't even realize we're doing it. We're doing it over and over again. And things
That's why they're not self-aware.
Yeah, exactly. This is why you need the help of others, right? So this is why you need small teams to help you.
And so kind of putting at the very top that will, separated from the skill. To get in the game and to make great decisions, strategy, looking around corners when nobody can really predict the future and make decisions with crazy amount of conflicting information to then act, read what happened, get feedback, adjust, and iterate is such a hard skill. But the problem is if you go into the environment on the right, getting in the game, but you are not self-aware, it is a disaster. Have you ever worked with someone on something that's not done before, kind of unclear? It can be planning for a family party, a birthday party that you really want to surprise someone. Or it could be something much more, like I say important, but maybe, everything's important these days. And when the left side triggers, what happens? And when I say the left side, the first thing we found in this immune system is So we call this program PRTA, which stands for Pre-Resiliency Training. Pre-resiliency, resiliency is seen as like, I can take criticism, I can take a fall, and I can still get back up. You're resilient, right? Someone can tell you, you're horrible, and you could crumble and shut down, and then you just want to disappear, maybe die. Or you could come back and be like, you know what, like, okay, like I have thick skin. What
What's
was
making
wrong?
you say that? Or you
Right.
get to a place where you actually say what's making you say that, right? That's
Oh,
true resilience.
But why we found pre-resiliency is we have become so good at looking around corners of any criticism we might get. We all have built in our own natural protective mechanisms. We have these red arrows that go out saying, I'm going to make it very painful and very difficult for you to tell me the truth. It's like this presentation that we're giving right now, Megan and I worked really hard. In fact, it's 10 years of work that we put into it, summarizing for you. And we're here till almost midnight last night. But I would really like to know from you, and by the way, we're doing it for free, but I'd like to know what you think about it, what we could have done better. You can say things and set it up in a way, whether it's through your words, whether it's through, quiver and lips, like I really want the truth, and your lips are quivering and people don't have the heart to tell you the truth. The pre-resiliency training is to work with a team of 10 people to identify how are we trying to, in the effort of protecting ourselves, preventing people from being able to tell us the truth. Then what we found on pre-risk taking is that we are built and wired to fear making mistakes. We fear something going wrong more than the greed and desire to succeed, that we're bracing. We're bracing for something going wrong. We're so easily triggered. Think about how easily we might get triggered by a word or a comment or a situation. And the reason we put this picture with a little battery is if you ever fly on a plane and as you go on the air and you lose cell phone signal, if you leave your phone on regular, just, without putting it into airplane mode, it's looking for signal. And the act of searching for signal will drain your battery at a hyper rate. And you wonder why, like, oh my God, what happened? Like my battery died in the course of a short flight. It's because that's what our phones do, but that's what we do as human beings. We are bracing and waiting and looking for what might trigger us. And the act of doing that drains our battery, drains our energy. And I mentioned these two things because it is so hard to get in the game in today's speed of change, speed of information. What chance do you have of success when you are bracing
like
to be triggered,
it's like
bracing?
being on guard, right? It's like being on guard and being really hyper alert for things to go wrong. So you're not going to be able to pick up signals of things that could go right because you're just bracing.
Because when you want to go into the notion of brainstorming and trying to identify what is the right thing, which is really, we were looking for a slide we couldn't find, but the right thing, you have to look around corners into the future, and nobody knows, which means you're going to explore a whole bunch of human guesses of how things might work out. But if you don't feel safe, if I say a certain word and Megan gets triggered, so she's out of the discussion, well, guess what? Brainstorm ended right there. If Megan or I put out signals of, you know what, like you can comment, but as long as you pick the right words and you don't offend me, and I'm going to make sure I protect myself, you'll see these things on the left are what I call speed bumps. If you're trying to go on a highway and move at the speed of information to have a discussion rapidly, but you have all these speed bumps that are there for all of us in 1 and 2, your ability to move fast, to come up with effective communication and brainstorming so that you can then focus on actioning the right thing, not a bunch of average things, but the right thing. This is very hard to do.